The world watched in astonishment as Bashar al-Assad's regime crumbled. Celebrations erupted in the streets of Damascus. Years of brutal civil war had finally come to an end. But the fall of Assad has created a dangerous power vacuum in Syria. The United States, heavily involved in the region for years, is deeply concerned. The U.S. has maintained a military presence in Syria, with around 900 troops still stationed there. Their initial goals were to combat the rise of ISIS and to pressure Assad. Those goals have since shifted. Securing oil and gas infrastructure has become a priority. Despite announcements of withdrawal, the U.S. remains in Syria. The sudden collapse of Assad's regime was unforeseen. Analysts believe that U.S. support for Ukraine and Israel played a role. By aiding these countries, the U.S. indirectly weakened Russia and Iran, Assad's main backers. This contributed to his downfall. Now the U.S. fears that Islamist insurgents will exploit the chaos. The lack of a clear successor to Assad is worrying. The country is fragmented, with various factions vying for control. The U.S. is wary of groups like Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a former al-Qaeda affiliate. The situation is volatile and unpredictable. The power vacuum in Syria has created a breeding ground for extremist groups. HTS in particular has emerged as a dominant force. They control large swaths of territory and have a powerful military force. This development is a major concern for the U.S. HTS has attempted to rebrand itself, distancing itself from al-Qaeda. However, the U.S. remains skeptical and continues to designate HTS as a terrorist organization. The group's ideology and goals remain unclear. This uncertainty makes them an unpredictable and potentially dangerous actor. The U.S. is concerned that HTS will consolidate its power and establish a hardline Islamist state. This would have dire consequences for the region. It could destabilize neighboring countries and provide a safe haven for terrorist organizations. The U.S. is also wary of other extremist groups operating in Syria, including remnants of ISIS. These groups are actively recruiting and could exploit the current instability to launch attacks. The situation requires careful monitoring and a well-defined strategy. The Syrian civil war has created one of the worst humanitarian crises in recent history. Millions have been displaced, both internally and as refugees in neighboring countries. The conflict has devastated infrastructure, leaving many without access to basic necessities. The fall of Assad offers a glimmer of hope. However, the situation remains dire. The power vacuum and the presence of multiple armed groups, including extremist organizations, pose significant challenges to delivering aid and rebuilding the country. The international community must prioritize humanitarian assistance to the Syrian people. This includes providing food, water, shelter, and medical care. It also requires addressing the long-term needs of the population, such as education and economic opportunities. The U.S. has a moral obligation to assist the Syrian people. They have been subjected to unimaginable suffering. A concerted international effort is needed to alleviate the humanitarian crisis and provide a path towards a brighter future. Section 4. Geopolitical implications and future scenarios. The fall of Assad and the ensuing power vacuum have significant geopolitical implications. The balance of power in the Middle East is in flux. This has the potential to reshape alliances and ignite new conflicts. One major concern is the potential for spillover into neighboring countries. Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, and Israel are all directly affected by events in Syria. The rise of extremist groups could destabilize these countries and draw them into the conflict. Another concern is the role of Russia and Iran. Both countries have invested heavily in propping up the Assad regime. They are unlikely to cede influence easily. Their continued involvement could lead to proxy conflicts and further instability. The future of Syria remains uncertain. Several scenarios are possible. HTS could consolidate its power, leading to a hardline Islamist state. Alternatively, a more fragmented Syria with various factions vying for control is also possible. A negotiated settlement, while ideal, seems unlikely in the near future. Section 5. Potential U.S. actions and international involvement. The U.S. faces a complex and challenging situation in Syria. The fall of Assad presents both opportunities and risks. The U.S. must carefully consider its options and work with international partners to promote stability and prevent further bloodshed. One option is to engage with HTS. This would involve opening channels of communication and exploring the possibility of a political settlement. However, this approach carries significant risks. HTS's ideology and goals remain unclear. Another option is to continue supporting other opposition groups. The US could provide military and financial assistance to moderate factions fighting against HTS and other extremist groups. However, this approach could prolong the conflict and lead to further instability. The US should also prioritize humanitarian assistance. This includes providing aid to those displaced by the conflict and supporting efforts to rebuild Syria's devastated infrastructure. A stable and prosperous Syria is essential for regional security. The international community must work together to address the crisis in Syria. This includes diplomatic efforts to broker a political solution, as well as providing humanitarian assistance and supporting the Syrian people's aspirations for a better future. The stakes are high, and the need for action is urgent.